The 2021 NFT hype was mainly based on collectibles. It's died down pretty quickly and only top projects seem to have survived. But the technology can be used for more than just JPEGs. Christoph Niemann, Blockchain Architect at AWS, will share some insights on their alternative use cases and what technology is required to support them. Christoph is an IT consultant and blockchain architect specialized in smart contracts on Ethereum. Prior to AWS, he was a blockchain architect at Mayborn Wolf. Yes. And a research assistant at the University of Beirut, Germany. Please welcome him.
Thank you. So currently I'm with AWS, and it might not be well known, but at AWS we do have blockchain services, and we encourage everyone to use them, of course. AWS in and of itself is mostly known as a Web 2, if you will, infrastructure provider. We have all these different kinds of services that are there. Just shameless marketing plug. We do have Web 3 services, so it's very, very useful if you're using one of our services anyways. What I want to talk about today or now is really NFTs, because they are the most well-known use case of tokens, if you will. More about tokens in general. Of course, we had a hard time, or have a hard time in the bear market. If you look at it, that graph is just taken from June, the OpenSea monthly volume. It looks like a nightmare. We had this peak, everyone was buying Bored Apes and CryptoPunks and whatnot, and now really nothing happens. If you go to OpenSea, it's like a desert, looks like it. So it begs the question, was that a hype that just dies away? Then, of course, the next question is, well, is volume and, well, monetary incentives, volumes, the number of trades, really a useful indicator for the usage or the utility of tokens and NFTs in general? What we've seen here on OpenSea last year mostly was, of course, collectibles. JPEGs really that you collect, namely, well, because of speculative reasons, of course, if you want to make money, but also because you want to belong to a community. So if you are a Bored Ape or own a Bored Ape, you are part of this community. And you've seen that on Twitter, everyone was changing their profile pictures to Bored Apes. And it's kind of this, well, not intimate, but it's this community that you now belong to. So it's really the feeling that you belong to something that you're buying into. And hopefully the just number of trades and number of volumes isn't really the best indicator. So what I want to highlight really is that tokens and, well, tokens in general and NFTs in specific have this much broader range of use cases, of course. I'm just highlighting 3 or 4 of them here. Digital identity is something that's really coming up now. What we do need is this self-sovereign, this notion of self-sovereign identities in the future. And we've, well, had a lot of talks earlier this day talk about that. So I want to go to, well, want to attest that I'm part of a community that, for instance, I'm German, or that I'm an adult, so that I'm older than 18, without disclosing all that personal details that make up my identity. So saying I'm older than 18 doesn't necessarily mean that I have to reveal my actual birth date. And that's what digital identity or self-sovereign identities allow, and they are mostly based on tokens, of course, because that's really what you're generating. You have these so-called verifiable credentials that are issued by some sort of institution, could be like a government entity if it's a passport, or could be a diploma if it's from a university. And then you create proofs on that you can then send off to, say, an employer that wants to employ you, and they only see the data that you decide to reveal to them. And those are really all tokens. So the underlying technology is blockchain, of course. In the middle part, liquidity positions on Uniswap, really nice use case, I think. In the DeFi space, if you provide liquidity to, well, Uniswap on a particular trading pair, so say ETH versus DAI, you provide ETH and DAI to that liquidity pool so that you can make money on trades that other people do. These liquidity positions are really represented as NFTs, and you can see these NFTs, they look like this left thing there. And if you want to, you can actually transfer them or trade them on OpenSea if you were so inclined. And what that really means is, if you have ownership of that NFT, it really gives you the entire liquidity position. So the NFT is just a proxy, if you will, for a liquidity position. So I'm highlighting this here because it's obviously a much larger use case than saying this is just a JPEG, this is just an image, because it highlights utility that we have on-chain that we really, well, probably can't represent otherwise. Then, still in the middle, ENS, Ethereum naming system. That's what it is. So basically, domain names on Ethereum also represented as NFTs. So whoever owns the NFT of a particular domain name is really the owner of that domain name. So he can decide what kind of records are associated with that domain. And that makes it really, really easy to do all kinds of stuff that you today do with DNS, of course. So if, say, I'm owning the domain and I want to sell it or transfer it, it just amounts to transferring an NFT from A to B, and then we're done with it. There's really no need to involve any other party or whatever is needed, what kinds of loops you have to hop through today to transfer domains. And then on the last one, dynamic NFTs, just something that I find interesting. I haven't really seen it much in practice, in reality. But saying NFTs, of course, have all these metadata associated with it. That doesn't need to be static. It can be dynamic. So having like a property there and saving the entire history of that property together with or on that NFT opens up all these supply chain use cases and makes it really easy to just track all the data that belongs to that property. In the last, probably 2 years ago or so, we did a supply chain use case at the time with a larger retailer for food, really. And they wanted to track the origins of that food all the way to the customer. And we did that based on a private blockchain at the time, Hyperledger Fabric. Just because we didn't have all these token-enabled systems that we have today. So if I were to do it again today, I would certainly vote for using a token-based blockchain for that, because it's so much easier. It's so much easier to track all these things, to transfer ownership, to add data to it, than using one of these more complicated technologies, if you will. So main point of this whole slide really is, my personal take is tokens, we've just seen the very beginning, and of course it was this peak, but I don't think the monetary value or volume is a good measure of success for these things, for tokens. I think they're here to stay, and basically we will see much more in the future, and hopefully much more than JPEGs. So that's what I'm advocating for, building these things now that no one's looking, and then once the interest ramps up again, we have all these things ready. Now, if you are a builder, then of course, we at AWS have some blockchain services, namely Amazon Managed Blockchain, excuse me, which is well, it's two things really. It's a private blockchain based on Hyperledger Fabric, and then it's a public Ethereum node. So if you want to issue tokens, then you can just easily point and click Amazon Managed Blockchain, have an Ethereum node up and running, and use that. And I've put it here, new token-based access. At AWS, normally our services have to authenticate against each other, so it's a very secure system, and we have this so-called SIG v4 authentication. That's really not much used anywhere else. So over the last 1.5 years or so that we have that service, we've seen that there was interest, but then people couldn't use it. They couldn't connect it to the existing frameworks, and we've received all that feedback from our customers. Well, this needs to be the industry standard. We need to adapt to, so that we can, say, spin up a graph node and use your service. And that's what the token-based access is. So no, it's really easy to use and easy to work with the default tools. So if you want to spin up a graph node, if you want to use Hardhat and Truffle and whatnot, it just is a plug-and-play blockchain node, if you will. I did call it we're doubling down on tokens, and I'm meaning we're doubling down on blockchains in general. So we as AWS, of course, think we have this service, it's up and running. We see that it will get bigger, and we are still working on it, and we're looking at customer feedback. Customers are obviously coming to us and saying, we'd like to see this and that, and we're considering all of that, and working on developing new services or extending the existing ones. And I'm emphasizing it as much because I know that AWS isn't known for its Web3 services, but there are some, and I'm a blockchain solution architect, so all our customers use our services if they want to. Over the last 2 years or so that we've been working with that, we have seen, I'm done almost, we have seen a lot of patterns that emerge that are fairly interesting to see and might be different to normal Web2 applications. So if you're interested in that and seeing how we think blockchain applications should look like and how they should connect to the existing, say, Web2 framework that normally is in place, we do have another talk later on the workshop stage where we present some of them, some useful patterns that we've seen so far. Thanks a lot.